This week's episode is brought to you in partnership with Zero Procure, who are here to make procurement simple. Zero Procure harnesses a network of specialists to ensure that businesses are working with the right suppliers at the right price. Hospitality Meets is delighted to partner with the Zero Procure team and their network to help keep this podcast accessible and free to listen to. Please get in touch with them for a chat. Just click on their link in the show notes or visit their site at zeroprocure.com/podcast. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is hospitality titan Robert Cook, CEO of Hostmore plc. Coming up on today's show, Robert does some name-dropping.
So I end up taking Elton John to the concert in my own car.
Phil highlights just how well known Robert is. So famous that he's even got his own Wikipedia page. And Robert shows the extremes he'll go to solve the staffing crisis.
We had Bob Geldof and Bono behind the bar with him helping.
All that and so much more as we chat through Robert's incredible career so far. Robert uses the words fun and luck a lot in our chat. I've never believed that you need luck when you've got drive and talent, but it's clear from all the stories that Robert gave us that he really has had a lot of fun along the way. I was so incredibly grateful that he gave the show so much time and wisdom from his career so far, and it's exciting to see Fridays have some new energy pumped into it. We'll be keeping a close eye on progress. Oh, and in case you're wondering, this is what my COVID voice sounds like. But I don't stop this show for anyone or anything, so I'd be forever grateful if you could give us a like, subscribe and review across your favourite podcast platform. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Hospitality Meets with me, your host, Phil Street. And I am thrilled to be getting some time with today's guest, who is undoubtedly one of our industry's most well-known titans. Can talk about that in a minute if you wish. Researching him, he's been a CEO for, since at least 2004, having been at the helm of many a recognisable brand such as Malmaison, Hotel du Vin, Village, Virgin Active, and now Hostmore plc, which has the brand formerly known as TGI Fridays, now simply Fridays, and a new brand, 63rd and First. I've no idea what he was doing before 2004, so I'm excited to find that out today. And it gives me huge pleasure to welcome one of the people within hospitality who is so famous that he's even got his own Wikipedia page. Robert Cook, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. How are you, Phil?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, very well, very well. Stranded at home because of a train situation, but other than that, everything's good.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think the world has the world's falling apart, isn't it? Really, there's no getting away from it.
In a word, yes.
Anyway, we don't need to talk about that today. Are you recording from? That's a very nice room, actually. What's the shirt in the background there?
That harks back to Malmaison days. That was gifted to me by Colin Montgomery, who was Ryder Cup captain at Celtic Manor. That's his winning captain shirt. And at the time, Mal looked after and its charity was the Elizabeth Montgomery Foundation, which was in conjunction with Maggie's Care Centres. Colin and myself and the teams and others walked the West Highland Way, and in fact, we walked the West Highland Way and the Caledonian Way together for charity. So that was a thank you from him, and I was a guest of his at that Ryder Cup. I'm a bit of a golf nut, so it was a nice thing to have.
What? Where's the accent from, Robert?
Originally Aberdeenshire,
okay.
Yeah. So born in Banffy and brought up in Peterhead, and then did hospitality at Robert Gordon's University in Aberdeen when it was called RGIT, Robert Gordon's Institute of Technology.
Got you. Yeah, my mum's actually from Peterhead, but there we are.
Is she?
Yes, yeah. Really? Yeah, it's been a long time since I've had any kind of roots back there, but yeah, there's some heritage there.
Yeah, well, my folks were hoteliers up there. So my father was the manager of the Station Hotel in Fraserburgh, and then from 1972 until he passed away in 86, he was at the Palace Hotel Peterhead.
Right, got you. Yeah, well, small world. But anyway, I've been excited to get you on the show for a while because one, we've been trying to do this for about a year now, I think. But you've been quite a busy chap. Two, you are, as I mentioned, you are recognised as an industry titan. I hope you don't mind me saying that. You've certainly been at the helm of some, as I said, some very recognisable brands. But I'm really, really interested to understand how you got there, because you've been at the helm of these brands for such a long time now. Sorry to say, I don't know if is that an insult, an indirect insult? I don't know.
Makes me feel a bit older, but that's fine.
So yeah, take us all the way back to the beginning of your career. You mentioned you were Robert Gordon. How did you get into hospitality in the first place?
Well, I think, I was, as I've mentioned, I was born and brought up in hospitality. I was born in the Bonnet Arms Hotel in Banchory. My folks were hoteliers up in Aberdeenshire. I went from there to Fraserburgh as a sort of 2-3-year-old. Left there when I was 7, and then went to Peterhead, and lived in a hotel. I mean, it's been well written before, but I lived in room 114 of the Palace Hotel in Peterhead until I was 18 years old.
Right.
And I be living in a hotel as the son of the manager, the managers. You live and breathe the place. You walk past reception. You go and get your supper out of the kitchen, and you go and sit in the dining room. And that's what I did all my life. And I was very popular at school because we had a lovely big ballroom there, and my dad used to let us play five-a-side football on a Wednesday night in the ballroom. But the penance was we had to polish the floor afterwards in readiness for the weddings that were in on Friday and Saturday. But no, listen, it was a great life. And actually, I didn't want to do hospitality. I was actually going to go and do PE I wanted to become a PE teacher. And sadly, I broke my back in a car accident. My own fault, being stupid, just passed my driving test, took my dad's flash Audi out and wrapped it around a tree, and I damaged my back. So PE was off the question, and then I had to come back and tell my father, who was pretty ill at the time, that I was going to go and do hospitality, which was absolutely the last thing he wanted to do.
Really?
Absolutely the last thing he wanted me to do,
despite him having built a career around and a life.
Despite him. Yeah, exactly. But he saw it as a hard slog. He was quite early, a pretty major stroke when I was 9 years old, and he had heart issues, and a lot of that he put down to the lifestyle. He was a heavy smoker, and I wouldn't say he was a heavy drinker. He was a heavy smoker, and just the hours of hospitality. So he was pretty miffed when I said, "Dad, I'm gonna go," and he never saw me finish at Robert Gordon's. I only did a year there when he passed. But I think, as my mother says to me now, if you look back and saw what you've done, you'd have been pretty proud of you. So I think, and the hospitality world I am now in, or have been for the last 20 years to today, to where he was, is a completely different world.
Yeah.
And they were genuinely days of long hours. I mean, my father and mother, they ran it together. Mother would get up and do breakfast, and father would come down about 10 o'clock in the morning, be there till the bar shut whenever it did. These were small hotels, but he was very hands-on. They were both hands-on, which is something I've always been myself, and I think it came from there. And then I was fortunate. I worked in the kitchen there under the head chef, and I worked in the restaurant. I did the ballroom bar on a Friday, Saturday night with Davy Wood, who was an icon of a barman back in the day. And I learned my ropes. So when I went to Robert Gordon's, I was sort of the cocky guy at the class because I sort of knew how to work a knife and chop onions and prepare and pare potatoes and know how to cook a steak in medium rare, well done or whatever.
Yeah.
And I knew how to cook fish. I knew to fillet fish, and I'd done all this sort of Gerardin work in the restaurant. Because back in the day, it was all about trolley work. So I knew all the practical stuff. So, but I had a great time there. And when I left there, I went straight I did my placement with then Holiday Inns. In fact, with Mr. Stephen Carter, who I know you've had on the podcast before. I mean, Stephen was the GM of the Birmingham Holiday Inn, and I was down in the Croydon one. And
he gets around a bit, doesn't he?
He does a bit, yeah. He did a bit, and still does. And I did my 16-week placement there. At the end of it, Roger Powell, the general manager, said, "Listen, you seem a pretty good guy. Do you want to come back when you finish?" So I did, and I was with Intercon, as it's now called. It was Holiday Inns in those days. I was there for about. I was there from 86 to 90. I was sort of Heathrow, Mayfair, Croydon, all sort of around London. But I missed home. I missed Scotland. My father had passed away, and Mum was up in Aberdeen running the hotel by herself. And I fancied coming home, or not home, but back to Scotland. And I was really lucky. And I always say it was one of the. I mean, I've had a few breaks, but that was the next part was the break to go and work in the opening of the Balmoral Hotel in Edinburgh. And I remember going there, and it was the whole management team from the top down had all basically came out of either Mandarin Oriental, Peninsula. The housekeeper came from the Carlton in Johannesburg, and my boss, Guillaume Briatz, he came from the Piro restaurant in the Mandarin Oriental in Hong Kong. And I was a Holiday Inn boy, so I had a lot to learn, and this was a 5-star deluxe hotel. But Peter Tyree took me under his wing and allowed me to grow in that hotel over the 2.5 years I was there. And I did really well. I ended up leaving there as food and beverage manager, and I loved it. It was but I needed to do other things. I've always I need to learn new strings to my bow. So I wanted to go and do big conference hotels. Again, Carter came into the hotel one day for a wine tasting and had seen me from my Holiday Inn days. I said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm assistant F&B manager at the time. So you must come over and work for me in the Moat House in Glasgow sometime." So I did that. I moved over on July 27th, 92. I remember the date well. And I started with Stephen and I became his deputy. I was his food and beverage manager to begin with, became the deputy GM after that. And 2.5 years there. And working for him was fantastic because, as everybody knows him, he's such a great leader and inspiration. But he actually let me run his hotel. And he would just pull you in every so often and say, "I wouldn't have done it that way," or "I would have done it that way. Congratulations, you did that well," or whatever. And that was, I had a fantastic 2.5 years then. Met my wife, Debbie, there. Debbie had worked for, and it's part of the sort of, how you meet luck as you go along, had worked at One Devonshire Gardens for Ken McCulluch, who was up to creating this new brand. But no one knew what it was at that time. So I spent 2 or 3 years with Stephen at the Moat House. I then had a foray back down south, and I had my first stint in hotels with golf, which I was really excited about, to open Slaley Hall in Northumberland, which I latterly came back to run as CEO when I was at De Vere Hotels.
Yeah.
And I had some time there, and then I went back to Intercontinental to the Crowne Plaza in Manchester, where one night Simply Red were staying, and a certain Ken McCulloch came in because he was in a JV with them on the Manchester Malmaison. So I saw Mr. McCulloch was staying, quickly went to reception, said, like, "Ken McCulloch's staying, one of the finest hoteliers in the UK. We need to get him into a suite." Had a bit of a barney with the front office manager because I was the F&B director at the time.
Right, yeah.
I need to get a room for this guy. He's really, really important. Anyway, we looked after Ken, and he saw me in the morning and said, "Look, you must come and have a chat with me one day, and we should come and do something with Malmaison." He said, "I know you're in the northeast with Slaley Hall. We're opening one in Newcastle. Do you fancy it?" And I went, and then the touch paper was lit. I opened the Newcastle Malmaison on the 4th of November, 96.
This was as GM.
As GM.
Yeah.
And it was a great opening. I mean, I was, again, you ride your luck. Newcastle was on the bounce. The quayside had just been redeveloped. The Baltic Flour Mill became the Contemporary Arts Centre. The Sage was opening. The new bridge was opening. Newcastle was on fire. The quayside was a place to be. And I had this lovely 120-bedroom hotel right on it. And we had a great time there. I had a great time at Mal the first time round. So Ken, no sooner had I opened Newcastle, said to me, "Look, I want you to be regional director." So I became a regional director for the 2 Scottish hotels and Newcastle. And then, lo and behold, the company went for sale. And it went to a REIT, Patriot Hospitality of America, bought Ken out. And that was the end of Malmaison under Ken McCulloch. But he phoned me and said, "Look, I'm about to do something with Formula One racing driver David Coulthard. We've bought a hotel in Monaco together, or in the throes of buying a hotel in Monaco. Would love you to come over. Love you to come over and run it." And I said, "That sounds terrible. I don't fancy that. Yeah. Monaco, not for me." Yeah. Anyway, that didn't take very long to say yes. So we went over to Monaco together, and I spent 4.5 years there. Working with Ken, and created the Columbus Hotel in Monte Carlo. And Fonvie converted the old Abella 186-bedroom hotel conversion. Tough job, because we had heavily unionized. The hotel was on strike when we bought it, and that really was tough to get everybody back to work and to get them to trust us. We were a new management coming into town. Nobody knew of us other than, and I think absolutely that's where David Coulthard and the name came to play. They all respected him as a Formula One pilot, as they called him, a pilot, in living, and he actually lived in the development. So people knew him, and that helped. But Ken was determined to create something new, and he got his wish, and we opened and created Columbus, and we looked to roll that out, actually. And again, a bit like Ken tried to roll out One Devonshire, and the bank had said to him, "Look, it's great, but it doesn't make enough money. Why don't you come up with something different?" And he came up with Malmaison. Ken was determined to come with a brand that was going to be super affordable, but was super good. And, that's where Dakota came from. So Dakota was born when we were still in Monaco. We opened the first one in Nottingham, and then we went on and did Edinburgh and so on and forth. And it was the reason it was called Dakota was because Dakota brought affordable flying to the masses. And this was about affordable luxury. And I think to this day, I still think Dakota is one of the best hotel brands that Ken did. And I still think to this day, it's one of the best hotel brands in the UK. Not everyone knows it because it's very northern based, but it's just a fantastic business.
Yeah. We have, actually tonight, the podcast goes back live again, and I've got Matt Townley on, who's regional ops director. Yeah. Matt's a proper character. I love him to bits.
One of my old graduates from Malmaison.
Really? Well, I actually wanted to talk to you about that because I did read about, this is kind of harping back to when you were GM at Malmaison in Newcastle. I read something somewhere that said that you staffed it with graduates and internal promotions. Is that true? That is absolutely true. It wasn't actually the Mal, it was the Hotel de Van. This is a few years later. So yeah, look, I did Dakota, but then we'll come back to that question. Sure.
So I did Dakota with Ken, started that. Then Ken and I got a knock on the door from Malmaison, the new owners, MWB, and said, we'd like you to come back to run the place because we've taken it back from Radisson. It's lost its way. We've not done anything since you left 4 years ago. We've only got one more hotel. We'd like to come back. And Ken hummed and hawed and decided not to. But I sort of straightened my tie and said, nice to meet you guys. Really enjoyed it. Maybe we'll talk again sometime. And about 5 weeks later, I got a call saying, would you come back? Just you, and come back as CEO. And I said, I'd love to. That was a heart-wrenching moment because I'd worked with Ken for 8.5 years and we had an amazing relationship. But I had to do it for myself. And it was, look, to be offered. Richard Balfour-Lynn to offer me, his 36-year-old guy who'd only ran 2-3 hotels at a time, to give him a whole brand was opportunity knocks. So I grabbed it with both arms.
You were 36 years old at this time?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. I had actually written down, you don't look like you're old enough to have been a CEO for as long as you have been. So now I kind of understand. You got there quite young.
I got there quite young. But again, I think, I was very lucky. And I was also lucky when I arrived at Mal and knew exactly that business inside out. It was still the same size. Some of the GMs are still around. We still had a lot of the rudiments of the team were there. And we built it on that. And I would say from 2004 to 11, that 7 years of buying Hotel de Van that year. And I'll come back to that story you asked me about a second ago. But we opened 5 hotels in 19 weeks in 2007. It was a roller. It was magic. And we had a great team. We'd Nick Gamble was our number 2. Keith Shearer, who was the group chef, still with me to this day. We had some great people in the business. And it was just magic. And, we really made a name for ourselves. Mal was still hustle bustle. It was breaking all the rules. It was still a really cool brand. Yep. And bringing Hotel de Van on board, was just, that was just the way to really own the boutique market in the UK. I mean, and I was pinching myself. I mean, by this time I'm sort of 37, 38, but I've got 27 hotels of the best in the market, spread from Brighton right up to Aberdeen. But then we did come to open the Hotel de Van in Newcastle, and by that time we had Sean Wheeler, who was really instrumental in gluing the two businesses together. And Sean, I rate as one of the best HR individuals there is out there. He really helped develop a real people purpose, and we had a really great sort of bench of general managers of the future. And we've mentioned a couple of them today. Matt Townley is one of those. Yep. And Andrew Crease, who came up through the ranks with us, who's now at the Allen in Manchester. I said to him, you come and run Newcastle HDV, you open it. I said, but I think we've got so much talent in our graduate pool. Let's do the whole thing with graduates and make a real statement that if you're good enough, you're old enough. So we did a program with Oxford Brookes and we did a program with Lausanne. And we had all these kids just knocking at the door. So the housekeeper was a graduate. The chef wasn't, but most of the team were. And also the head of finance at the Newcastle Mall also oversaw the Hotel de Van. And we did it. And it opened really well. And, I just think if there's one thing that I think I loved about Mal is we grew great talent. And we grew our talent from within. And if you look at them now, Andy Roger off running Cameron House as the MD, Grant McKenzie running all Chris Stewart's stuff in Edinburgh, Matt Townley, now regional director for, they're just 3, Jamie Stevens at Village, they're just 3 or 4 guys that have gone really and gone places. And, around that we had general managers like Lizzie Kelp, who's now running Virgin Edition with John Walker around the world. The talent's gone on. And we just had a great team spirit in those days, and probably the best team I ever had. And it was fun, and we worked bloody hard, but we had great fun along the way. And we picked up the odd award here and there, and both the hotel groups were renowned and got AA recognition and Guardian Business Traveller Awards every year, and with sommeliers winning sommelier of the year every year in Hotel de Ban. It was just a magic time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a brand at the time when around that time, was making my first foray back onto land, having did the first part of my life on ships, on cruise ships. And it was one of the first brands that I was kind of made aware of that I didn't know anything about, but you guys were definitely ripping it up, like in terms of it was doing, I think, as you said, it was somewhere where you can go and have a great experience, like a luxury experience, but you're not paying several £100 a night to do that.
Yeah. That was the whole thing. I mean, the strapline was we dare to be different. The mission statement, we will do the simple things well with care, consistency, and passion. And we were always a great value proposition. We never, we always did. We did it a lot more for less. That was all these little strap lines that we had that we stuck by. Yeah. And I think if you stuck by the golden rules of the inception of a concept, it's a bit like what's happened in Fridays when I've come back here. I remember Fridays when it opened in '93 in Glasgow, and I always say to the team, I remember '93 in Glasgow. Why we're not doing like that today? Because that's how it was. That's what made this brand magic, and that's what made Mal magic. We stuck to the rules. Ken put down some really sound foundations. And we built it from there. And it was a great journey. But I was there a long time. I was there 4 years as a GM and a regional director, and then a further 7 years. 11 years in one businesses. I would never have stayed. Looking back, I wouldn't have stayed so long. Right. But it was time to move on. And then I went to De Vere. Andrew Koppel, who had just taken over the De Vere business. He dangled a carrot for me to come over there. I'd already secured a job somewhere else, actually. When I was leaving Mal, but he said, come over here. I was loosely involved anyway because Richard Balfourlin and the MWB boys took it from public to private, and I was one of the shareholders. So I knew the business. I'd been involved in the business. I was sort of the hotel consultant on the board anyway. But then I went into full-time capacity at Village, and then soon after got the resort properties as well. So the Mottram Halls, the Brightons, the Grand of Brighton, the Belfry and Cameron House, etc. And that was a great job. I mean, Village, I think, is one of the best brands out there. It's a bit of an unsung hero because it's a very, very commercially successful business. It's got a great rooms business. It's got a great food and beverage business. It's also got a massive gym business. And that was my first foray into gyms. And I'm talking a business meaningful, nothing to have 4,000 or 5,000 members in a hotel gym with the full gym kit that you would expect to see in a Virgin Active or a David Lloyd. It was a great business, and I enjoyed that very much. But I more enjoyed, if I'm honest, I more enjoyed the resort side. I've mentioned I'm a golf geek, not just because of the golf and the fact that we became a sponsor of the PGA and we did 5 European events. But, the Cameron Houses of this world, the Sleley Halls of this world, the Alton Halls, the Belfry, an absolute icon, which we managed for KSL, who eventually became the owners of Village, and Malmaison as it happened. And, that was a great business. You had the pump of the Grand at Brighton with all its history. And then we had the refurbishment that we did at Cameron House to try and compete in the 5-star upper end market in Scotland, which I think we achieved. So it was great fun. I then, after that, had a wee foray at McDonald Hotels. But even going into that, I was wanting to do something different. I wanted to widen my thinking along the space. And I got approached by Virgin Active, and it was quite lucky again. Simon Sussman, the chairman, who's ex-Marks and Spencer, one of the best retailers in the world, based out in Cape Town. He was the new chairman of Virgin Active in the UK, and he turned around to the board and said, look, the problem with this business, it doesn't look after people. It's got no hospitality in its veins whatsoever. And I think whilst we're a very good gym business, you need to go and find a hospitality guy. So an agency phoned me up, and I went to Virgin Active, and it was my first foray out of hotels. And I absolutely loved it. I had 4.5 years there. We had 3 years of double-digit EBITDA growth. We turned the business around from where it was. I was told when I arrived by my boss, Paul Wolf, he said, this business is like catching a falling knife, and it needs somebody really to get into the. And I rolled my sleeves up, and I got round all the stores, all the clubs, got to know the people, and knew nothing about health and fitness, knew about managing people, but quickly got into it. And it's all about sales, and it's all about terminations. And if you can get your sales high and your terminations, you're working well. Right. And that's what we did. I had a fantastic, again, surrounding yourself with great people is key. I had a great girl called Maura Galabaster who joined from actually MWB's business exchange business, the service office business, but really could sell. And her and the team really made it happen. Great operations team, fantastic FD who joined the same day as me, and I'd never met him before. So he was appointed alongside me, but I didn't meet him, and he didn't meet me. Dave Carter, who now actually runs the business. And Virgin was great, a great brand. Met the man himself on a couple of occasions, Sir Richard, absolutely inspirational, and had a great 4.5 years there. But it didn't have enough hospitality in it, and I missed that bit. So I was looking for something.
So was that a little bit like to take that on? Was that like almost scratching an itch, as it were, to go and I suppose take your skill set that you've learned and you're kind of evolving as it goes, and actually saying, can I take the experience that I have in this hospitality business and take that into a completely different sector, but who still obviously wants to deliver a high caliber of hospitality, and perhaps that was the missing piece of their jigsaw.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think you've got to have guts in life. And I knew when I was being interviewed for the job. First of all, I really loved the idea of Virgin. Who wouldn't want to work for that brand? And that's important to me. Secondly, I liked the space, and I had a little play with it in Village. But this was really a business that was going the wrong way, and I wanted to do some sort of turnaround. So I threw myself at it, and I say to people to this day, I think anyone can run anything if they've got good leadership, and if they've got a good talent spot within their demeanour, and they're commercial, and they're dogged, and they're determined. And I think those words probably describe me quite well. And Virgin was that was a great business. I still talk to the guys regularly, and I think the future of hotels, whilst there are some fantastic hotels out there, I think hotels have really got to grasp what the opportunity is on wellness, particularly in studio wellness, whether it's spinning, boxing, Pilates, yoga, integrated into a hotel space. You could create a hotel brand of real note if you did something around that line. So anyway, 4.5 years there, that was great. Wanted to do something different, and then waited, had a couple of things I looked at. In the meantime, stupidly went for a haircut one day, and Alnwick, where I live, and came out and saw there was a building for sale called the Convent of Mercy. I went to have a look at it. I went into the estate agent, and I said, Duncan, can I have keys for this thing? He said, a lot of people have looked at it, Robert. You'll never convert into flats. I said, well, let me have a look at it. I walked in. It was obvious what it should be. It was obvious it should be a wee boutique hotel. So we bought it, and my wife and I, and my wife mainly, Debbie, she converted it, and it's the Cookie Jar, 11-bedroom luxury hotel in Northumberland. It does great. So it's still got
my mother can't escape you either, because she's now living with my father, I should say, in Northumberland. They're in a little place called Warkworth, literally just around the corner.
Well, I could be in Warkworth in a 20-minute walk from here.
Yeah, my goodness.
Yeah. That's a small world. Yeah. Well, it's a lovely part of the world, and I've been here since my Newcastle days. So I've been here since '96, and it's home. And I've commuted in that LNER to London for the last 25 years.
Right.
I
don't think the world know about Northumberland. I mean, no. I know it gets busy in the summer, but I think everybody, I probably shouldn't say this in a public forum, but everybody flocks to Cornwall and Devon. But I think Northumberland's got better beaches.
Well, it has, and it's the new Cornwall, and there are there's other hotels popping up all over the place up here of note and of luxury. But so we did that, and the Cookie Jar's a lovely little thing to have. It's 11 bedrooms and it goes like a storm. And I have nothing to do with it other than I help them choose the wine list, and that's true. So then an agent phoned me up one day, said, I've got something. But you need to come round and sign an NDA. So I went round to the office, signed the NDA, and it was Fridays. It was TGI Fridays. And wow, I thought, I used to love that. I used to, like everyone else says, I used to love that brand. Let's have a look at it. So we had a look at it, looked under the bonnet, and I said, yeah, let's go for it. And there was a purpose there. And you alluded it before we started the podcast. There was a purpose there for Electra to do something, either to sell it or to float it. And that was very exciting for me. I was really keen to float a company and take something into a PLC. Obviously, I had never done that before. I think the job in itself, coming back to hospitality and restaurants and bars, was a little bit more in my gift rather than health and fitness. So I wasn't scared of that element of it. But the actual commercial moving it into a PLC was going to be a real learning curve. We arrived in the December of 19 and took the job on in June. And during the June to December time, we worked with a consumer research company about what the consumer was thinking about Fridays. And we interviewed about 4,000 consumers to say, right, what do you think of Fridays is today, where we'd like to see it, and so on and so forth. And we talked to lapsed users as well to why they're not using it. And the output of that was we needed to invest in quality. We had to make the menu simpler and easier to execute, and we had to become a bit more relevant. Relevant in our food, relevant in our drinks. Our cocktails were perceived as being too blue, watery and sweet, and not authentic and not using the real stuff, the real premium spirits. So we did all that. We did all that work, and we then started implementing it. And then wham, bang, COVID, 3 months after we started.
Thanks very much, yeah.
Thanks very much. And look, we battled hard and came out the other end pretty well. You know, we maintained a good ethic, and we maintained a great balance sheet and cash in bank, and we preserved cash. And we've been able to come out of it and grow, which has been fantastic. It's been a rocky ride with coming out of COVID, and then the whole staffing issue and the logistics issue and the supply chain issue. That's all settled down. Staffing is still a problem, not necessarily finding staff or quality of staff, but keeping them, because the man next door is going to throw a few more pounds at it. So that's tricky. But then now we're in this sort of inflation situation. We're in cost of living squeeze. People are paying more to fill the tank, more to fill their fridges, and people are eating out less. So it's been a tough old ride. But after all that's said and done, a pandemic and now the realms of what looks like a recession coming, and certainly a consumer squeeze, I still love it. It's been a great journey. And they're the most phenomenal team. The team at store level, if you cut them in half, they're red and white. You know, they are absolutely. Right. I mean, Friday's culture is ingrained in them, and they'll get up and go, and their fire in their belly is phenomenal. But the trouble is, we lost a lot of them during COVID, and we've had to balance that back with new people coming on board, and that's been tough for them, and it's been tough for getting it all back on the road again. But it's. The interesting thing is that the three things, quality, relevance, and simplicity, that the consumer was shouting for. And he was also shouting for, you used to be really good at cocktails, and I've grown up now and I drink different cocktails. You need to create a bar that's going to give us something different, which is where 63rd and Firsters came from. And we've got 3 open, and we open Edinburgh in July 7th, actually, next week, 2 weeks' time. That was where that came from. And that's working really well. Great cocktail bar. 70% is alcohol, 30% is food. And we're just doing small sharing plates and that sort of Americana-style food. And that's been great for us. And then, me being me, I said, right, we need to be a little bit more innovative to fill the spaces that we can get into, because Friday stores are about 6,500 square feet. They can't go into every city and town in the UK. We need to create with some nimble opportunity with a sort of quick service restaurant. So in Dundee, 4 months ago, we launched Fridays and Go, which is fundamentally a grab and go and a delivery, and press the screens and go to the counter and pick up your food and either sit in or go out and eat it. And that's worked really well and going like a train. So we're very excited about that. Dipping off a little bit now with the students, and the football's finished. The students are leaving Dundee, and the schools are about to close. So the summer will be interesting to see how it works. But it's a test. Let's see what it goes. And if it works, we'd love to roll them out. But it's a great business, and it's you know, I always say to the guys, I remember when it opened in '93 in Glasgow. In fact, the opening team stayed with Stephen and I at the Moat House, and the opening HR director was Sean Wheeler, who then came and worked for me at Malmaison. Really? Pinched them from there. And you know, I talk about those days, and you know, when I first had a fajita was in Fridays in Glasgow in 1993. No one ever heard of what these things were, and now they're a staple in our menu, and we've got to be as good at doing them as we was then. Yeah. So it's a fun business, and it's hugely challenging. And then, of course, just at the back of the pandemic, we then floated the company on.
Yeah, no, indeed.
It's very different to running a private equity-led business or a privately owned business. You're at the behest of a lot of investor meetings. You're running a public company. And there's a lot of rules and regs. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been tough because the share price hasn't been the best, and the markets are not the best. We were a demerger, which was not understood by everybody, and we have a legacy shareholder base, and that needs evolving. But you know, it's been tough. But you know, I've still a smile on my face and I still fire in my belly. So
yeah. Well, crikey, I mean, geez,
that's the story so far.
There's a lot to unpack there, for sure. The thing, I'm guessing by moving into the role that you've got now as well with the PLC, I'm detecting there's a big part of you that likes, that you're inquisitive and you like to test yourself. Because I'm guessing at the age of 36, taking your first CEO position, did you in your head at the time, were you thinking, I am so ready for this? Or were you thinking, God, what have I done? Or a combination of all of that?
I think with Mal and going back to, I mean, I was ops director when I left, and it hadn't got any bigger. So I was absolutely up for it, and I wanted to smash it. And they were great people, Richard Belfalin and Mike Bibbring and Bill Broadbent, the guys at MWB. Really, we gelled, we got on great. So that wasn't scary. I'll be honest, I woke up on the 2nd of November this year and said, oh my God, I'm now running a PLC. And there's no manual. This is how to run a PLC. It's you learn as you go.
Yeah.
And you have good days and you wonder why the price has gone down, and you have bad days and you wonder why the price has gone up. So it still takes a lot of understanding, and there's a lot of nuances to it. It's complex, but it's still, at the end of the day, if you run a good business on the long term, PLC world is about a marathon, not a sprint. And you've just got to be patient and stick to the knitting of what you set out in your prospectus and just let it roll. And it's a different thing. But there was an oh my God moment on the 2nd of November. And I remember after a week with Virgin, I thought to myself, have I done the right thing here? Because, it's a very strange place. We're not selling any bedrooms here. I'm not used to this. And our food and beverage is about 4% of our turnover. So there's been times when you think, but you've just got to, roll your sleeves up and knuckle down.
Yeah, and I suppose that's when you enter into any kind of leadership role. I suppose that's half the battle. Is so you've got to back yourself, right? But equally, you can't do your job properly if you don't have good people around you. Yeah.
I have been fortunate that I've surrounded myself with some great people, and I've always took. I mean, Ken McCulluch always say, employ people better than yourself. I'm not a marketing expert. I'm not a finance expert. I'm not an ops expert. I'm a generalist. I was a general manager. I'm now a CEO. So make sure the specialists you've got are the best you can get. And I've had some great people work in marketing. I mean, at Virgin, Louise Phillip, who's now moved on to become CMO for the whole of the Ivy Group. I mean, did an amazing job. And she came into Malmaison way back as a trainee almost, or not a trainee, but she was quite junior in the marketing team. But I'm a great believer, and if you're good enough, you're old enough, and give people a chance. And if you see a bit of talent in somebody, push them, and they'll grab on, and they'll grow. And that's been probably the biggest thrill I've had out of this industry is watching young talent grow and just giving people opportunity. And sometimes you get it wrong, and we've got to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, right, hold on a second, we've pushed that one too far. Let's just bring it back again, and then reset. It's not about, oh, well, they've not done a good job. When someone fails that we've put into a position, I look at myself in the mirror and say, where did we get it wrong? It's not always the person that gets it wrong. Yeah. But that's the magic of this industry.
Yeah, for sure. I think you touch on a really great point there as well about the fact that's the industry needs more of that kind of leadership in terms of, let's not hang people out to dry. If they get something wrong, let's all look internally and say, right, where did that go wrong, and how can we make sure that doesn't happen again? What would you say to anybody that's listening, who maybe has aspirations to become a chief exec themselves? What would you say to them? What do they need to go and learn, or there's obviously many different routes that you can get to your destination, but what advice would you give to anybody who wanted to head down that path?
I think the first thing is you've got to, your first role as a CEO, take on something of a size and of a subject matter that you know inside out, because it can be a lonely world, and people will try and trip you up. So I think that's the first thing, and don't try and boil the ocean in month 1 and month 2. It is a step-by-step process, and do take your time and listen to people around you that's been in the business for. I haven't listened sometimes. I took a while to listen at Village. I went in there. I came off the back of Malmaison, and I thought things could change quickly, and I should have listened more. So I think that's really, really important, and also don't be frightened to go and seek advice. Seek advice from mentors and people around you and people that are in the position. There's nothing wrong with that. And I remember Richard Balfour-Lynn again when I went to Mal. He did introduce me to other people. In fact, my banks, actually, Deutsche Bank, introduced me to CEOs of Starwood and CEOs of RF and other bigger groups for me just to go and listen and talk to them. And I think, you build a good network, which is great. And this industry is about networking and it's about fun. Not enough of that going on at the moment, but it's about fun. But also to listen and to share best practice or share ideas with each other. I mean, there's nothing wrong with plagiarism as long as it's a great form of flattery, isn't
it? Yeah, nicely put. I completely agree with you. I think I've said this on many. I don't even know these days if it's on this podcast or the podcast I do for the IOH. But we talk about actually that's how we win, because actually amongst us there is so much knowledge and passion and care for the industry that actually if we all just listen to each other and help each other rise up, then ultimately we end up with a much better industry. I definitely feel like it's evolving though, like that there's a lot more people thinking this way now, whereas maybe in the kind of boom time it was just always about growth, profit, how much how fast and all of those sorts of things. But I can sense that actually people are coming around to the fact that actually if you focus on the people element of your business a lot, then actually you're going to see great benefit in your profit.
No, 100%. And I used to irritate Richard at MWB quite a bit because I'd be in front of banks, in front of investors, and they say, Robert, how quickly can we grow Malmaison? How quickly can we grow Hotel de Van? I say, I can only grow it as quickly as I can grow the talent, because this is a nuanced brand. And if we'd taken Hotel de Van, I mean, I spent a lot of time with Robin Hudson when he came out of Hotel de Van. I spent a lot of time with him and I put the whole thing in cotton wool. I wouldn't let anybody from Mal touch it because it was a very, very specialist brand. And it had a lot of intricacies that made it great. And people and they were obvious things. And we took our time on that. And they would say to me, I think Hotel de Van could grow to about 50 hotels in the UK. I said, not a chance. It'll never get to 50 hotels because there's not 50 towns that are ready for, or Hotel de Van's ready for them. And I think you can't shoot for the stars all the time with certain brands. And there comes a time, and Robin has done it again in the Pig. He's got it to a level, set it, and he's still there, but he's moved it on with KSL. He did the same with us. And I think I was the guy. I always said to people after Robin left that I would take it to the next level, which is 25, 30. That's where I am at. And then it can go into the world of the big boys. And I think that's really, really important. But I meant what I said then. We could only grow. HDV particularly, Hotel de Van particularly, was about the right people in the right place at the right time with the right knowledge. And they don't come along every day of the week. So you got to build from within. So it could only grow as quickly as we could grow from within.
Yeah, absolutely. There's massive sort of sides, very, very relevant things along with sport as well. I'm a Liverpool fan. I'm a massive Jurgen Klopp fan. But
so am I.
Yeah, for lots of different reasons. But one of the main reasons is that, yes, of course, they've opened the checkbook a little bit to get some players in. But actually, if you look at their long-term plan, it's all about the development from within. And from a commercial standpoint, notwithstanding, that actually, that just makes sense, doesn't it? Like to really look after the ones within.
Totally. And I was very fortunate back in the day of Mal. I got to know Alex Ferguson quite well. And I always
might have to end it now, the conversation.
I'm a big Klopp fan. I like Klopp, but Fergie was always about the team, the team, and about growing that talent. That Beckham Scholes era, and there was always people buying. I mean, Fergie won the championship he was there 25 years. He won the championship how many times with about 4 different teams?
Yeah,
because when somebody dropped, someone else was ready to come in behind them, and I think that's a big learning curve for our industry and any industry. I always like to have people on the bench that are ready to step in, because where there's a gap, there's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's in football, that's in any team sport. And, at the end of the day, what we're doing is a team sport.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And actually, the point there on evolution, that's very relevant to the role that you have now, notwithstanding whatever you're doing with your team, but actually the product. I mean, it's a brand that's been around since 1965. Is that right?
65. Yeah, 65.
And So in that time, that's a long time to be an established restaurant business. It must have to evolve. And if it's not evolving, and maybe that's the point that when you took over at the time, that perhaps it wasn't evolving, or it was evolving in the wrong way. The evolution is a necessary part of business.
No, 100%. I mean, the food had to evolve, and it had to be relevant, and had to be simple for today's market. But our staples are burgers, ribs, and steaks, and stick with that. But our cocktails similarly had to be, the cocktail world's changed so much that it's about the premium spirit and the craft of cocktail making. So, it's a bit like sommeliers. It's a craft. Bartendering's a craft. So we had to put that back in. And then in the world that we're in about relevance, it's not just about going out for supper or dinner and having a good meal and great service. It's about the experience and the overall experiential now. And you're seeing, golf concepts opening up. You're seeing sixes, the cricket concept opening up. You're seeing Flight Club, the darts concept opening up. There has to be more to do. So we have to think about how can we bring experience into Fridays, where we can afford the capital and also afford the space. So people have said to me, "Oh, you could put a bowling alley into Fridays." I said, "Yeah, but I wipe out 40 covers, 50 covers. I need to think about other ways." So we're playing with at table entertainment. We're playing with live music. We're playing with all sorts of stuff to make it that dwell time that bit more. But equally, investing in the quality of the food, investing in the quality of the service, investing in the quality of the cocktails, and becoming a place again. And look, we're a long way off, but we're making good strides.
And that's all you can hope for, really, ultimately, isn't it? Is that you just keep progressing forward.
Totally.
It's
totally.
not about. You got is it 87 restaurants now? On the Fridays brand.
And then the 4 on 63rd. Really excited about Edinburgh's opening. We've got the old Café Rouge on Frederick Street, which is a great location. And Graham Nisbet, who runs that business, used to run Cameron House for me. He's an absolute stickler for details. So, and we've got a great opening party planned for the 7th of July with all the right people apparently. So the PR company tells me, and I know a few of the names. So we're excited about that. And then Fridays and Go, I think that could be a real game changer. This whole fast casual, and obviously delivery is massive. So I know, listen, it's been a great journey, but I'm not finished yet. There's a lot more to do.
You're only you're 45 now, something like that.
Yeah, 56, and the grey bits are coming out now.
Yeah. Well, I'm 45 and I've got grey as well. So I think that was COVID. I'll just say that. Right. I actually just want to touch on very, very quickly your time in Monaco, and specifically David Coulthard, obviously another Scot.
Yeah.
He has dabbled in his lifetime in the world of hotels and hospitality. What was it like to work in that environment, especially coming from where you were before? Very different part of the world, different clientele.
Yeah, totally. I mean, different clientele, although we'd quite a lot of celebs stay at Mal. I mean, we did a big thing with the music industry. So we always had somebody of a band staying in Mal. And, the Balmoral, listen, I met Palace Hotel Peterhead. I served breakfast to Margaret Thatcher there, So it's been around for a while for me. David was an amazing owner. He was a stickler for detail. He would notice things that only hoteliers would notice.
Right.
He would feel the under of the table and feel there's a bit of edge on it and say that just needs smoothing out because somebody might catch the finger on it. He was a stickler for detail, but he was massively supportive in terms of he would interact with the team, interact with the staff. He would take the senior people out. He was brilliant. But and I tell this story quite a lot. But the thing that he taught me, and it's sort of where I am. I'm hugely competitive. But David had the plane crash in Lyon on the Tuesday with his girlfriend and the dog. All survived. He broke a rib. Came back to Monaco in the car, and he stayed Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it was. And they had Barcelona at the weekend, so he was in the car by the weekend.
Crikey!
And broken rib and bruising and so on and so forth. And he was second in Imola that weekend. And he came up the steps of the hotel, flew in a helicopter, not his own helicopter, just the helipad was next to the hotel. The Monaco helipad was next to the hotel. And he came up the steps, and I was sort of hanging around waiting for him. Because I knew he'd come in. You always come in after a Grand Prix for something to eat. And he came up the steps, and I said, "David, what a performance today?" And he turned around and he said, "Cookie, second is first of the losers." Now, he had a broken rib. He then subsequently showed me a massive blister on his backside or just the top of his backside, where there was a rivet rattling all the way around in the 78 laps. It caused a blister on his backside. But he was great, and his family were great, and he was very respectful. And it was good time. And obviously, with him, you meet. I remember one night going up the stairs of the hotel. I used to come in on Monday night when I was doing the Dakota stuff. I'd come back in 4. Come up on Monday night about 8:15, and it was Edge's wedding that weekend in Monaco. And I go into the bar, and David's shouting at me, "Cookie, how am I supposed to do this?" And he had Bob Geldof and Bono behind the bar with him helping, and you had Christy Turlington and Naomi Campbell in the bar. You Michael Stipe there, and you Lenny Kravitz strumming away. I mean, it was. You tell these stories. I mean, hoteliers can tell stories because they've seen this and done that. That was some night. Scott Harper, who's the general manager of the hotel now, who's now CEO at Mal, he just looked at me and said, "Can you pinch yourself here? You've got everybody in that bar you want to have in." It was magic. Really great, really good times. Yeah, I mean, look, Monaco's a great place from March to September. The tumbleweed comes through from September to March. It's quite quiet in the winter.
Is that right? Right.
Yeah, it's quiet. It is quiet. But when it flies, it flies.
Yeah.
And Grand Prix weekend is just special.
Yes. Well, I had good luck trying to get a hotel room that weekend. Exactly. Or an apartment or anything like that. Yeah. But I think the point you make there is absolutely bang on, though. I mean, there are definitely moments in this industry whereby you have to just take the moment in, right? Whereby, look what's happening around us, and we're part of this, and their enjoyment is because of us, and that sort of thing. And it's I've got my own story about Bob Geldof, but I've told that before. I actually did a very bad impression of him as well. It did involve alcohol. But anyway, that's for another time. Yeah, well, I mean, look, hell of a story, as you say. Still loads to do. What does the next year look like for you in an ideal world, I suppose?
Well, the next year is going to, I think, look, let's be real here. The next year is going to be pretty tough. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think inflation's just came out today, another % higher, and the consumer's definitely feeling the squeeze. But the next, we've got 3 new openings this year for Fridays, and same again next year. So we're continuing with our growth, and it's business as usual, but it's going to be tough. And we've always said that we would like to look if we're still in this position of strength we're in today, if we come out of this next episode still in the same position, we would like to acquire smaller, more disruptive brands that maybe seek capital to grow and really create the platform that Hostmore was designed for, to put more brands in. But in the short term, growing Fridays and Go, and a couple more 63rd and First are on the cards.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, wish you all the very best with the next phase. Now that you're floated as well, that's done. Focus on forward.
Absolutely. And then look, I think you've just got to. I think you're going to hunker down for the next 12 to 18 months. But I think meanwhile, you should be thinking about what does innovation look like? What's the future look like? I know everybody talks about digitalizing the company. That's sort of past now. We should have all done that by now. This is about people are going to be wanting to come out for experience, and experiential leisure is the way forward. And we've just got to make sure that Fridays fits in that in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. You've given us some stories already, but are there any glaring, amusing anecdotes from your career that you can share with us? Appreciate that most of them are probably unshareable.
Listen, there's lots of little things. I mean, that time I mentioned about Margaret Thatcher, she stayed in the palace in Peterhead, and my mother took her breakfast to her room, not me, but I wanted to go with her because I wanted to meet the first ever woman Prime Minister. So I go up to her and say, "Nice to meet you, Mum," and very nice to meet the first woman Prime Minister. And she said to me, "I'm actually not the first woman Prime Minister yet, but I hope to be in the election." I didn't. And the 9-year-old didn't quite understand what leader of the opposition was. But anyway, lo and behold, when it happened, she sent me a book and with signed, "I wish you Godspeed through the journey of life, Margaret H. Thatcher." Now, I know she wasn't everybody's cup of tea, but I thought that was a really nice touch. Also, back in those days, Twiggy and her husband came to stay in the hotel when he was doing a serial called Oil Strikes North. And she was so bored, she would take me to school in the morning. So Twiggy used to take me to school in the morning.
I didn't see that coming.
There was lots around Monaco and the Grand Prix. But, we've met so many people. The one funny one from Malmaison, Newcastle, was Elton John was staying. And we had to call him Lord Rupert Whoopsie. Lord Rupert Whoopsie, yeah. We couldn't call him Elton John. And that was quite funny. But then when he went down to get his car, the Rolls Royce, the driver was a friend of his from Newcastle. And the Rolls Royce was like a 1978 Silver Shadow. And he locked it, and he locked the keys in it, and he couldn't get into it. Like so I ended up taking Elton John to the concert in my own car. That was quite funny.
My God, there's
loads.
A life.
I'm not telling you too much. You'll read them in my book, and I wanted to sell well. So
very good. Yes, well, I was going to say you should absolutely write a book. You should probably write a book about how to become a CEO. That's there's an idea for you. I'll take 10%. It's fine. But no, getting
the roles easy. It's staying there's the problem. But I seem to have done all right so far. This is my fifth CEO, and it's we'll probably get another couple under my belt before I hang my boots up.
Yeah, good man. Final question before I let you get on your way. What 3 reasons would you give to somebody to join hospitality?
It's the most fun industry in the world. It allows you to be innovative, if that's in your bones. And it gives you enormous pleasure to see people grow around you. And I think they're 3 massive things. The days of hospitality is hard work and poor pay. It's only hard work and poor pay if you don't apply yourself in anything in life. And, I think it's a marvelous business. But I think if you're innovative in spirit, it's a great place for you. It's a hell of a fun, and you can have great camaraderie. And I think those 3 things, if you've got pride in your bones, it's a great industry.
Yeah, and just look at all the people that you've met, who you've mentioned all the way through your story, who you're still in contact with. You can still turn to for mentorship, or camaraderie. Excuse me, as you said.
Totally. I mean, I still speak to my bosses from years ago, all of them at some point, and in some of them in their late 70s now, and it's great just to reminisce. It's an industry you can reminisce on because there's so many grand stories. Yeah. And do you remember that night with that glass of wine? Do you remember the night he opened that? It's just so many. It's a magic business, and but it's a magic business because it's full of magic people, and we've got to keep allowing people to be themselves, and make sure we don't lose fun. The industry is about characters. You got the Harry Murrays of this world. I mean, he's one of the greatest characters in the industry. Yeah. The Ken McCulluchs, the Nick McLeish Ryan, sadly no longer with us. So people like that, they're massive characters. I remember when Nick, who had Crinan Hotel, when he stayed at the Newcastle Mall, the Britannia was outside before it went up to Edinburgh for its final dock, and he knew his mother was an his parents were ex-Navy people, and I think he was a quartermaster on the Queen Mary. Well, I mean, the night with him on there and the stories he could tell with the ship's Commodore, which we were invited on board for, it was just fantastic. But those characters are, you see less of these characters now, and that's why I really applaud the likes of Townley and Andy Roger, and these guys are the characters, and they've got to allow them to be characters. And private equity hasn't got to smother them, because the industry needs that level of fun in it.
Yeah, for sure. I could not agree more. And actually, you mentioned the experience part as being such a massive part of hospitality. What's an experience without somebody who's a bit of a character to kind of guide you through that experience?
Yeah, totally. And that can be your concierge. It can be, characters in the kitchen. Some of the guys on dishwashing, on KPs in the world, they're just absolute storytellers. Yeah. And internally, you've got that. Never mind what the guest sees. But, I think, please allow, we had a thing in Mal. We liked you, we heard you, be yourself. And we should allow people to be themselves. And if you're a character, get them on board, and it makes the place a far more enriched place to work.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, that's a wonderfully positive way to end it off. Robert, thank you so much for spending time and sharing your story today, and wish you a fabulous year ahead.
Great stuff. Thanks for talking.
No problem at all. Take care.
Cheers. All the best. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there we have it. What an unbelievable career from Robert so far, and how about all those stories? By the sounds of it, we haven't even scratched the surface, and I'll be keeping an eye out for that book. I'll be back again next Wednesday at 8 p.m. with more stories from hospitality, and with a bit of luck, a normal voice. But until then, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.